Halina po at pakinggan ang isa pa nating kapatid na narrator na si Malayang Imahinasyon. Nagtatampok ng mga kwentong hango sa mga totoong pangyayari o pwedeng katang-isip lamang. Mga kwentong mapapaisip ka o di kaya'y dadalhin ka sa pantasya. At palagi niyang pinapaalala na hindi lahat ng naririnig mo o nakikita mo ay totoo. Malay mo, bunga lang ito ng malikot mong isipan at nabuo sa iyong malayang imahinasyon. Tayo na at makinig. Salamat.
The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you.
Before I begin this narration, let me apologize in advance for any mispronounced words. If you hear a word I mispronounced and you know how to say it correctly, please feel free to comment below. Thank you for understanding. Young Xinhai was the most prolific known serial killer that China has seen since the establishment of the People's Republic of China, who confessed to committing 67 murders and 23 rapes between 1999 and 2003 and was sentenced to death. Young was born into an extremely poor family in Henan province, China in 1968 and was the youngest of 4 children. In fact, his family was one of the most poverty-stricken in the village they lived in. Young was described as intelligent but introverted, and he left school in 1985 when he was 17 years old. He refused to go back to the family home and instead traveled around China finding work as a laborer. Young was convicted of theft in both 1988 and 1991 and was sent to labor camps to serve his sentences. He was arrested in 1996 for attempted rape, and this time, he was sent to prison for 5 years. He only served 3 years, however, and was released in 1999. This was the same year his gruesome killing spree began. Each crime more brutal than the one before it, and he would continue to kill until at least 67 people had died at his hands. Young went on a murder spree between 1999 and 2003 in Hebei, Shandong, Anhui, and Henan provinces. He would enter homes at night and kill everyone who occupied the property. Most of the victims were farmers, and if a whole family was present, he would kill them all. His preferred method was to hack and bash them to death with hammers, axes, and shovels. He always wore large shoes, so if forensic prints were taken, they wouldn't match his regular shoes. He also wore new clothes at each murder to reduce the amount of forensic transfer as he went from crime scene to crime scene. One of his most brutal murders was in October 2002. He broke into a home and killed the father and raped the mother, who was pregnant, and killed their 6-year-old child. Incredibly, the woman survived the attack but had serious head injuries. On November 3, 2003, Young was seen acting suspiciously in Hebei and was detained by the police. During questioning, police discovered Young was wanted for murder in 4 separate provinces. He subsequently confessed to committing 65 murders, 23 rapes, and 5 attacks that resulted in serious injury. 49 murders, 17 rapes, and 5 attacks in Henan, 8 murders and 3 rapes in Hebei, 6 murders and 2 rapes in Anhui, and 2 murders and 1 rape in Shandong. His DNA was also matched to several of the crime scenes. Later, it was discovered that Young contracted HIV from one of his victims. Young went on trial, and on February 1, 2004, he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to death. Young's execution was carried out swiftly following sentencing. He was sentenced on February 1, 2004, and executed just 13 days later on February 14. The execution was carried out by a gunshot to his head. Ahmad Suradji, also known as Nasib, Kelewang, and Datuk Maringgi, was an Indonesian serial killer who admitted to murdering 42 girls and women between 1986 and 1997. His victims' age ranged in between 11 and 30. In Indonesia, consulting mystic doctors is a way of living. A lot of people visit the doctors because they think the doctors have paranormal powers and ask them for medical and spiritual advice. A lot of women sought the doctor's help believing they would make themselves richer, healthier, and more sexually attractive to their husbands or boyfriends. Ahmad Suradji was one of these doctors. Most of the women who had hired Suradji had required him to cast magic spells to ensure the faithfulness of their husbands or boyfriends. Suradji's method was to charge each victim according to their needs. The price was usually around $300. Then he would take them to a sugarcane plantation near his home and bury them in the ground up to their waist. He would tell the women it was part of his ritual. Once in the ground, he strangled each woman with electrical cable. Then he drank their saliva, undressed their corpse, and reburied them with their heads pointing to his home in order to enhance his magical powers. The ritual supposedly increased the man's powers so he could help clients heal all manner of problems, from poverty to illness to love. Suradji was born on January 10, 1949 and lived in Medan, Indonesia. He was born to a self-proclaimed sorcerer in the interior of Indonesia. He watched every day while his father, whose name is unknown, earned praises and respect for resolving issues affecting their community. Suradji was often neglected by his parents. As a kid, he was apparently different and had difficulty making friends, which left him alone to do his own thing. Suradji was lonely and ignored as a child, and he struggled in school, eventually turning to crime. When he was first sentenced to jail, he was just 19 years old and served 10 years for minor crimes and public abuse. 2 years after he was released, he was back behind bars for cattle theft. Upon his release, he didn't like the way people looked at him and treated him, so he decided to become a sorcerer like his father. He began assisting members of his community by healing the sick, and before long, he was admired and respected. He worked as a cattle breeder and as a dukon, a class of shaman reputed to possess supernatural powers. Suradji's clients were mostly women looking for advice about how to improve their luck or keep their beauty. According to Suradji, his deceased father visited him in a dream in 1986 and told him that he needed to drink the saliva of 70 dead young women. This would help him become a mystic healer. Little is known about his initial victims, as he was finally arrested only after the body of his final victim was found. Since it would take him a long time to find 70 dead women, he began to kill women himself so that he could drink their saliva. It helped that most of the women who came to him for help had done so in secret, so there was no way of linking him to their disappearances. If all else failed and willing customers ran short, Suradji would hire prostitutes and murder them instead. On April 27, 1997, a young farmer was feeding his livestock in the sugarcane fields when he came across an odd mound of soil. He quickly told his village head, Sugito, of his discovery, which alarmed him. He also happened to be Suradji's next-door neighbor. In an interview, Sugito said that he and a few other men went to inspect the mound and had stuck a piece of wood into it, only to be assaulted by the rancid stench of decay. Worried, he immediately alerted the military, who in return told Sugito to start digging to see what was beneath the mound of dirt. They said should we find a body, we should leave it alone and inform them immediately, he said. 6 men and 2 hours later, they discovered a body. Naked and bloated, the petrified body of a young woman was removed from the muddy grave. The police were called. She was vaguely recognized as 21-year-old Sri Kemala Dewi by onlookers, and her family was summoned to identify her body. No one knew what had happened, as they last saw Dewi 3 days previously when she stepped out of her home to run an errand. Soon after the discovery of her body, a 15-year-old rickshaw driver stepped forward, shedding light on the mystery behind Dewi's death. Andrea Sowitu explained that on April 24, 1997, Dewi had asked him to take her to a destination without elaborating on details, saying that she did not disclose her destination until they were halfway there. She also never requested to be picked up. The police was informed and soon they learned that she had last visited Suradji. Suradji, however, denied any connection to the killing. During their investigation, the police found Dewey's handbag, dress, and bracelet in Suradji's home, which eventually led to his arrest. In his confession, Suradji shared that Dewey had gone to him as she had a dispute with her fiancé and wanted him back. She was seeking assistance from Suradji to ensure her fiancé did not leave her for another woman. Suradji went through 4 days of interrogation, during which he willingly confessed that he had killed up to 42 young women in the same way. Further excavation was carried out in the sugarcane field where the bodies were buried. 4 other bodies were also identified shortly after discovery because their families came forward. There were 4 bodies which could not be identified and had to be cremated without anyone claiming them. It was just impossible to recognize the rest as they had been reduced to a pile of skulls and bones. His 3 wives, all sisters, were also arrested for assisting in the murders and helping to hide the bodies. One of his wives, Tumini, was tried as his accomplice. The trial began on December 11, 1997, and although Suradji maintained his innocence, he was found guilty on April 27, 1998 by a 3-judge panel in Lubuk Pakam. He was sentenced to death by firing squad and executed on July 10, 2008.
Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took the time to listen to my narration. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I am Twysted Mind and please enjoy the rest of your day. Salamat!